join us at 10:30, where you will be able to see the worship service, and also you'll be able to hear my lesson at that time. I have to tell you that I am excited about this because things are starting to go back to normal. And by normal, I mean not doing things the way we used to do them, but go back to a way that we can be together. Some of you are able to do that, and I really hope that you will join us at Westside and Aurora, or wherever it is that you are. I hope that soon you'll feel comfortable and able to assemble with saints. Super important thing to be doing. I'm going to be writing, and I'm going to be talking about that some in the future. Being together is something, community, sharing, fellowship, all those words are words that are about being together and being connected. And we can do that so much when we are assembling together. So I hope that you're able to do that. And for those of you who can't, and I know that there are some of you who really can't assemble, then I do hope that you will continue to study through the live stream and be able to participate in the sense of following along. A couple weeks ago, I preached a lesson here about why it's reasonable to have faith, and that faith should be reasonable. I followed that up last week by talking about that I felt that, well, if faith is reasonable, then it's reasonable to obey God. We should have reasonable faith and reasonable obedience. If we believe it's true, then it's reasonable to do it. Today, I would take it one step further, and this is the last in this series of reasonableness. So listen, the Bible does strongly warn against just blindly following and just doing whatever we want or what anybody else wants. That's not reasonable. It's reasonable to follow what God would have us to do. And therefore, it's reasonable not only to obey, but it's reasonable to also to take this and accept it and do it. Today, I want to show you why I believe that it's reasonable for us to go one step farther and talk to and try to teach other people about Jesus Christ. I know that we can think of a lot of excuses for not talking and not trying to teach other people. We all probably feel many of the same fears, some of the same apprehensions, some of the self-limitations and constraints, some of the reasons that other people aren't going to accept or will even reject us. I'm not going to focus on those today. I want us to focus on why it is reasonable for us, every single one of us who are Christians, to try at least to talk to other people about Jesus and about his word, the gospel. And the very first reason is found in Mark chapter 16, 15, and 16, where Jesus was sending his disciples out into the world. He himself is going to be leaving the earth, leaving behind disciples like us to spread his word. Matthew 16, 15, and he said to them, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. He who believes and is baptized will be saved. He who does not believe will be condemned." We're going to reference this verse some more in just a minute. But it is reasonable. If we're people who want to obey, we're people who believe in Jesus, then we're people who believe that we should do this, if no other reason. Jesus said so. And it is connected to him and our faith in him and who we believe him to be. And that's what he says at the end of the book of Matthew. Matthew records the same conversation, but he records it a little bit differently when he says, "All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth." That's Matthew 28:18. Jesus has all authority in heaven and all authority on earth, over us and over this world too. So what does that mean? He says in verse 19, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of this age." Because we believe in who Jesus is, that he is Lord of Lords and King of Kings. We sing it, we say it, we pray it. He says, well, if you believe that because he has all authority, then go make disciples. Go tell people. Teach them to observe all things that I have commanded you. This is super important. We say that we're going to submit to him because he has all authority. So will we submit to Jesus in this area? It is reasonable. If we believe that Jesus has all authority, then we're going to do what he says. And one of the things that he said, maybe even one of the last things that he said, was go and make disciples. Go and teach them. And I wonder if, the reasons that we sometimes use for not obeying this is really going to be valid in God's eyes. It's dangerous, or people aren't going to listen, or people will ostracize me or laugh at me, or they're not going to accept it anyway. And Jesus didn't say, well, unless you're going to be laughed at, or no, he just said, go teach the world. In John chapter 6, the famous time when disciples were leaving Jesus, he turns to the 12, are you going to also go away? In verses 67, 68, 69 of John 6, this is where Peter says, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. And he goes on to say, and we know, we've come to believe that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Two things. Jesus had something. He had the words of life, and that was going to keep them close to Jesus and who he is. Kept them close. Well, Jesus said that he is the only way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through him. John 14, verse 6. We know that. And the reason I know we know that is because we have accepted that for ourselves. We've submitted to him ourselves. In fact, it's not unreasonable for us to point other people to Christ because we are 100% convinced that he is the only way. I would say it's unreasonable for us to not talk to people because we believe it, because we know it, because it's what our life has become about. Jesus Christ, who he is, what he wills, and what he promises. So first, Jesus said so, and we follow him, we submit to him. Second, and also equally powerful, is that we know that people are lost. If we didn't know that people were lost, then it would, not be unreasonable if we didn't tell them that, they were lost. We're talking about people who are our close friends and family, because that's what happened in the Bible. Andrew, in John chapter 1, right there, first chapter of John, verses 41, 42, when he heard Jesus teach, he went and found his brother Simon Peter, the guy who becomes the Apostle Peter. And he says, we have found the Messiah. And he brought him to Jesus. Why? But he was so blown away by Jesus. Cornelius, it says in Acts chapter 10 and verse 24, he had called together his relatives and close friends. Cornelius, a Gentile who's invited a Jew to come and talk to him because he knew Peter was going to tell him, he says, words by which you and all your household will be saved. And so Cornelius and his whole household were baptized that day. Why did Cornelius talk to other people? He was on fire about knowing what was right. He wanted other people. He knew other people who were lost, other people who needed to hear these things. It's not a coincidence that when Lydia was baptized in Acts chapter 16, verses 11 through 15, that so was her household. The jailer in Philippi was baptized, and so was his household in Acts chapter 16. What's up with that? What's up with, it just wasn't just one guy, but there's all these other people. And the reason is because they knew that they were lost. And so they invited these other people, made sure that they were present and that they heard the gospel preached. Listen, Jesus and the gospel are the most important parts of our lives. And it is reasonable that we talk about them, that we talk about it with other people. It should ooze out of us. It is reasonable for us to teach other people, just like we talk about other things that are less important to us, but that we're excited about, or that we just heard about, or that we saw. look, we found something in the scriptures. We found Jesus Christ, or we found something new that we hadn't noticed. How can we not talk about it? And one more. I think it's reasonable to teach other people because people don't know they're lost. Remember, Jesus said, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Some of you know that I've been to Europe and preached the gospel, and I've been blessed to be sent by the brethren to go to Africa, and we are really dedicated to, we're interested. We know we're supposed to preach the gospel to every creature, but not just me or not just us as a group, but each of us. Every creature involves a person that's living next door to you, or living in your own household, or the person that you work with, or somebody you go to school with. Every creature. In Luke chapter 10 and verse 2, Jesus talked about how that the harvest truly is great, but the laborers are few. I think it's kind of interesting. I was looking up that historians estimate that the world population around the first century was somewhere around 170 to 200 million people. Maybe we don't think about the world being such a big place with that many people, 170 to 200 million people in the world. Now the world population has exceeded 7 billion, close to 300 million in the United States. And while it's true that there were fewer followers of Christ in the first century than there are now, the church and those who are teaching have certainly not grown at a pace that has kept up with population growth. If the harvest was great in the first century when there were, I don't know, let's just say 200 million people, if the laborers were few then, what do you think it is now? Now, I said I wasn't going to talk about that much, but I'll just mention that I know that it's difficult and challenging to talk to other people. And there are probably more how kind of questions in teaching people than there are why questions. We know the why, that's not the problem. We know that people are lost, although we don't think about it that much. We walk down the street and we don't think about that person that I just walked by, or that person neighbor that waved at me, or the person that's living in my own house is lost. We don't think about that every day. I want to suggest to you that we need to be more creative, reaching out to more people, watching for opportunities, creating opportunities for God to come up in the conversation, talking about what you did over the weekend, or a gospel meeting coming up, or what you like to do and one of the things you like to read. Oh, what kind of books do you like to read? I like to read the Bible. Do you read the Bible? You might be surprised what happens from that. Or having people into your home where they can connect with you and become friends with you, and find out that you really do care about people. And so when you talk about caring about their soul, they'll know that it comes from a place of true care and love. And learn from our mistakes and our failures, because sometimes we do some things that aren't helpful in trying to talk to people, and they feel judged, or they feel condemned, or whatever, and you learn from that rather than just turning off, say, well, nobody will listen, or I'm never doing that again. Learn from it. Ask other people to critique what you did and give you some advice. You have to remember that you have opportunities that I'll never have. I have opportunities that you'll never have. You know people I will never know, and I know people that you'll never know. We must not give up. And sometimes it's a several-year plan that we are going to introduce it slowly. But sometimes it has to be quick, because somebody is about to do something disastrous, and like, no, wait a minute, that's not right. Not afraid to say something's wrong. Say it with kindly, teaching the truth and love. Love and truth can be done, and sometimes people are offended by the truth. But that doesn't mean that you didn't try to love them. And hopefully they know that it's come from a place of love and goodwill. I know that it can be overwhelming. I know that it can be discouraging at times. I've experienced that. It's the story of the Two Shoe Salesmen. You've probably heard about this story many, many years ago. You know, two shoe salesmen went to Africa, and one wrote home and said, "I'm coming home. I can't sell shoes here. They don't wear shoes." The second wrote home and said, "This was a dream. This place was a dream come true. Everybody needs shoes." It's a matter of perspective and optimism and looking for opportunities. You know, a lot of times we have to instill a sense of need in other people because they're going through life and they think that their needs are being met, or they're thinking that life is awful and not realizing that their needs can be met by looking at things from a spiritual perspective. And so we have to maybe instill a sense of true spiritual need, not just the needs that they sense. Mustn't take no for an answer any more than we take no for an answer when our children won't take medicine. What would we do if we warned somebody that their house was on fire, but they didn't believe us? How adamant, how persuasive would we get? Why are we willing to get active when we see physical danger, but not spiritual danger? Is it about us? It's reasonable to talk to other people about their souls, and it has to not be about us. And we have to see that it can't be about what they think about us or what they say about us or what they maybe even might try to do to us. And when things do happen that are negative, we need to see it as not happening to us, but them rejecting Christ that they see in us. Or is it really, really, really about them? They need this. And I'm going to show them. I'm going to give them what they need, what will truly help them, not just in this life, but in the life to come. So is it reasonable to speak to others about the gospel? Yes. It's reasonable because we know what it is. We know what the gospel is. We know where it came from. We know what it can do for them. Actually, it would be unreasonable to not talk to them about it. I was listening to a very well-known atheist. In fact, he is extremely evangelistic about his atheism. And he told a story about people who, time after time, didn't talk about their faith. And he saw that as evidence that they didn't truly believe. He saw that as evidence that because they weren't passionate about it, he said, as evidence that God isn't real. Because if they really believed he was real, if they really thought he was on the road to eternal hell, just like if your house was on fire, they would say something. They would have to say something. But because they don't, because they won't, because they're afraid or timid or embarrassed, he said it can't be real. When we talk about it, it's because we've heard something wonderful. And when we hear wonderful things, we talk about it. When we see something amazing, we tell somebody about it. This clouds I saw, this accident I saw, this sports events that I saw, this wedding, this beautiful thing. We talk about it. But when we know information that's needed by somebody, we tell them. Now, they might think we're crazy. We might think that we shouldn't be saying anything about it, but we share it with them and hopefully they'll accept it. When we know someone is headed in the wrong direction, we say, whoa, wait, it's that way. Why will we do that about physical things, but not spiritual things? So it's time for us to get reasonable. We talk about having reasonable faith. We have reasons for our faith. We talk about that it's reasonable to obey God in fact, unreasonable to believe it and not do it. So it's reasonable to talk to other people. You have friends, you have family, you have acquaintances, you have neighbors, you have new people that you meet. Talk to them. Tell them your reasons for the hope that is in you. Thanks for studying with us today.